God hates no one. God doesn't hate you. And many of us are like, well, yeah, we know that. But I often encounter many people who don't. I encounter many people who think that God hates them. And that might be for a lot of different reasons. Maybe it's because they have a lot of things that have happened in their life or that are currently happening in their life that they hate. And they think that God is in some way punishing them for that. God not only dislikes them, but hates them. For many people that I encounter and talk to as well, they hate themselves. They have such self-hate. And they project that out onto God and think that God hates them as well. And just a word about self-hate. I mean, God understands that. God gets that. And I know in my own experience, self-hate comes from hopelessness, situational despair and depression and hopelessness about the future or anything that can change. God understands and gets that. But there's also a message in the church that God is angry and disappointed in us, and that even God is a God of wrath. Now, in my experience in life, I've had the privilege and the blessing. Britta, come here. She's in the river. Privilege and blessing in my life of growing up, experiencing and knowing the grace and love of God. But many haven't had that experience, and they think that God is angry or disappointed in them. And then, I mean, what is it? Either God is loving or God is the God of wrath. I mean, which is it? Does God love us or does God hate us? Which one is it? Well, it was about 30 years ago now. I can't believe it's coming up on 30 years, but about that much time ago, I was a student at North Park Seminary. Shout out to all my seminary friends. I love those days and I love that time and I love being with you. And I'll never forget it, and it's a thought that came to my mind this week when we celebrated or experienced Ash Wednesday this last Wednesday, and now it's the first Sunday of Lent, this Sunday. But it was in my introduction to theology class taught by John Weborg, and I and several of my friends became John Weborg groupies during that time. And John read a prayer from the Book of Common Prayer for Ash Wednesday. And the first line in that prayer, and John, the way he read it and the way he said it, I mean, he kind of looked at us and we really had to think about it. But the first line in the prayer for Ash Wednesday from the Book of Common Prayer says this: Everlasting and almighty God, you hate nothing you have made. That God hates nothing that God has made. God is love. 1 John 4:8. It's the ultimate truth. God is love. God is not vengeance. God is not wrath. God is not anger. God is pure love. But the problem we have, and I think Christians catch this subtly, and we may not even know that we have it, but we don't completely trust the God, the Creator, the Father behind Jesus, because we've got father issues, but we also have the view of the atonement. It's the oldest view of atonement. In fact, it was published in 1098 by Anselm of Canterbury. And atonement means the view of what Jesus did on the cross. And in that view, he writes about payment, penalty, and punishment, and that Jesus had to die to satisfy a God of wrath. So for a lot of Christians I know, it's even an unconscious, subconscious belief that we have that God is really a God of wrath, that he's angry at us and he needs to punish us and punish Jesus for our sin. He can't even look at us. He has to look at us through Jesus in order to love us. This is the oldest view of the doctrine of atonement, and we carry it in our church cultures to this day. God is love. And I even heard a pastor say recently to his congregation, God not only hates the sin, but he hates the sinner. And that we are objects of God's wrath. No. God is love, and we are objects of God's love. So this Lent, as you walk through the days of Lent, as you come into Holy Week and Passion Week, give consideration to this thought. Jesus did not come to save us from God, but to show us God. Not to save us from the wrath of God, but to show us and demonstrate the love of God. So until next time, may you live all the days of your life.